Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Spectre here for another edition of Midnight Rider. Good to have you aboard for this now Monday, the 25th edition, episode 33 here. We're got a lot to get to here this evening. We're going to cover some of the proposed and filed Biden EOs that have taken place since Infraduation Day. Election 2020 follow-up, and of course, if you're on the YouTube side, you'll see that YouTube promptly flagged things already. Don't get your knickers in a wad, YouTube. Geez. In any case, Dems in control. Some of their plans with all that's going on. Davos, that's gearing up here as of today. Be going on for the next few days. DJT plans and a little bit of a follow-up to the 1776 report and that I covered here as well. So stick around. We'll see you back here shortly on the other side. Warning. These social media platforms may be hazardous to your health. Censorship kills. Pain coming. This has been a PSA by Breaking Spectre. Alright, welcome back. Appreciate you guys tuning in. If you're on the YouTube side, welcome aboard. If you're over on Twitch, good to see you. D-Live, good to have you aboard. And of course, over on the Tiger Network, Jim and company over there doing a fantastic job with the platform. Appreciate you guys tuning in over there as well. Do like, share, subscribe across all the platforms should something happen. You can find me on any one of those. And I did drop the link out there. You can see the nrq.net where you can find me across all the various platforms. My mainstay obviously is on Gab, so if you're over there you can always see the broadcast net kicked out before showtime as well. Alright, so like I said, on the broadcast tonight, we're going to get into it here, starting off with none other than the EOs and that Biden has kicked off since Infraduation Day. Starting off yesterday, this week is going to be a busy week in terms of more EOs and that coming. I think, what was there, like 15, 17, 19, or whatever the heck the number was. I'm going to touch upon that and dispel some of the rumors and that I saw initially out on social media sites and whatnot. But before I do, let me get into this. As a preview of Biden's executive orders for next week, meaning this week. This week, Biden will continue his blitz of executive actions after signing 17 such directives in his first week, covering a range of issues, much of which were aimed at undoing various Trump initiatives, ranging from immigration to climate policy. And of course, here's a little graphic, days in office here, and whoop, here you see Biden right off the get-go. Looks like he's taken a page out of old 44's playbook, the old pen and phone in hand. Who needs Congress anyway? I believe in financial terms we would call that going parabolic. But nonetheless, I digress. Says whether he knows what he's signing or not. Yeah, there you see the graphic and that compared to Obama, Trump, and, of course, W from in the past. Nonetheless, says whether he knows what he's signing or not for his agenda. We get into that. Says, gee, I don't know what I'm signing. And I don't know if you guys have seen this, but I'll let it play through. And I suppose that's probably going to pretty well sum things up for his short-lived presidency, but we'll see. For his second week in office, Biden plans on signing another flurry of executive actions, going further on climate and immigration, while also focusing on healthcare and other issues. Each day will have a theme, according to The Hill. So today, if you were paying attention, Monday was Buy American Day. And of course, if you've seen any of the headlines net out there, you'll recognize a lot of people going out and saying, well, this was plagiarized directly from DJT. And I'm not all that surprised. But it says he will sign an executive order directing agencies to strengthen requirements that goods and services are purchased from American businesses and workers. Biden pledged on the campaign trail to make a $400 billion investment during his first term towards purchasing products made by American workers, as well as tighten loopholes and waivers allowing federal agencies to buy products made overseas. Tuesday, tomorrow, is supposed to be Equity Day, which will include a broad range of executive orders related to racial equity. The president is likely to establish a policing commission and reinstate Obama-era rules on the transfer of military-style equipment to local law enforcement. I believe that's the old 1044 program, if I'm not mistaken. He is also expected to sign an executive order directing the Department of Justice to improve prison conditions and begin to eliminate the use of private prisons. Oh, isn't that just dandy? Other executive actions lined up for Tuesday include a memorandum directing agencies to strengthen engagement with Native American tribes, a memo ordering the Department of Housing and Urban Development to promote equality in housing, and an order disavowing discrimination against the Asian American and Pacific Islander community. Wow, I guess I didn't realize we had such a problem with that community. Man, I digress. Wednesday will be Climate Day, where Biden will announce plans for a U.S.-hosted summit to be held on Earth Day, and likely sign an executive order to combat climate change domestically and elevate climate change as a national security policy. Where was climate change in the last year with all the COVID stuff? Did that just disappear, and now it's a national security priority? Yeah, just questioning. As well as reestablish the Presidential Council of Advisors on Science and Technology. And of course, that move comes after last week's executive action to rejoin the Paris Climate Agreement while revoking a key permit for the Keystone XL pipeline. Thursday is going to be Healthcare Day, during which Biden will likely rescind the so-called Mexico City policy, which bans the use of U.S. funds for foreign orgs which endorse or provide abortions. The policy, described as a global gag rule by reproductive health advocates, was first instated by then-President Reagan and has been repeatedly rescinded by Dem presidents and reinstated by Republican presidents in the years since. Biden will also order a review of the Trump administration's controversial changes to the Title X family planning program, which required family planning providers participating in the program to stop providing or promoting abortions to remain eligible for funding. And then, of course, the president is also slated to sign an executive order aimed at strengthening Medicaid and initiating an open enrollment period under the Affordable Care Act. And on Friday, not to be outdone, we'll settle with Immigration Day, on which Biden will expand some of the immigration-related actions he took on his first day in office. And again, according to The Hill, one of the orders will likely be related to regional migration and border processing, and will rescind Trump-era policies surrounding the asylum program. It will also reportedly contain strategies to address the root causes of the Central American migration to the United States. Biden will also sign an order establishing a task force to reunify migrant families separated during the Trump administration. Never mind the fact that, it was a continuation of his predecessor's policies. Biden himself faced criticism during the Democratic primaries for the Obama administration's deportation policies, but the Trump administration implemented an official zero-tolerance policy that led to the separation of thousands of migrant families. The president will also sign an order directing an immediate review of the public charge rule and other actions to remove barriers and restore trust in the legal immigration system, including improving the naturalization process. And a fourth order, establishing principles to guide the implementation of the refugee admission program, is tentatively on the schedule for Friday, but could be scrapped or changed, according to the memo. And there you have it. We can't help but wonder if the press will be herded out of the room if they dare ask Biden to discuss the sweeping changes he's making. Right. So, nonetheless, there you have it. That is what is on the docket for this week. And of course, like I said, last week you saw floating around social media, perhaps people saying, well, he was signing blank documents. No, I don't think that's the case. People were citing, well, nothing has hit the Federal Register. They don't really exist. And that's a bunch of baloney because it does take time for things to catch up in the actual Federal Register. This is the actual site you can go to, the federalregister.gov's presidential documents / executive orders. Here you can see that there are indeed now 9 that have hit for Biden since his issuance last week. And so he signed these on the 20th, and of course there's about a 5-day lag. So you can see Executive Order 13993 going all the way back to Executive Order 13985. And I'll say this, this directly out of the Federal Register's Twitter. It says here, as of late yesterday, somebody was asking what the lag was, and the Federal Register publishes by 8:45 every Monday through Friday, excluding federal holidays. It says we make periodic updates to the inspection page throughout the day. After a presidential doc is signed, it has to be delivered, and we don't control the timeline. There are 19 presidential docs in the 125 issue. Furthermore, it says here as of this morning, 19, the White House presidential doc published today. So obviously this is only still showing 9 at the moment, but there are to be about 10 more added, up to and not including, I should say, the ones not previously discussed. So again, I'll just go ahead and drop the link out there. You guys can check those out at your leisure. I would advise keeping track of these throughout the tenure of old Biden here, just in case. I'll be doing the same as well. All right, that being said, off to some other news. And of course, Janet Yellen here was just approved here today. Senate confirmations net for the Treasury Secretary as part of Biden's cabinet, as it were. If you recall, Janet Yellen used to be the Federal Reserve prior to Jerome Powell that DJT had put in place. So basically you can expect more of the same as things were under 44. Chances are you're probably going to see more mass monetary and all that sort of stuff, the helicopter money, get people acclimated to the government and the handouts and everything else, and just basically spend into oblivion. So that will be the policies of old Yellen, and never mind the fact that, hey, the next time you look at your dollars and various bills in your pocket, it's going to have Yellen's signature on them rather than Mnuchin. So in any case, that is ongoing, all the various secretaries net getting sworn in and approved. On that note as well, and moving along, we get to Gateway Pundit here today. Says update on the big lie. Law professor confirms election fraud evidence is significant. Cases only dismissed on process grounds, not merit. This out of Jim Hoff today over there. Says the liberal elites and fake news media are working feverishly to cover up the big lie. Diana West wrote yesterday on how the jackal media and hyena politicians are tearing to pieces all opponents of the coup that installed the Biden-Harris gang into office. The far-left power structure must eliminate all voices who may threaten the big lie. You are no longer allowed to question the historic fraud that installed a dementia patient and his unpopular California sidekick who refused to campaign into the White House. So, yeah, that continues on, but millions of Americans refuse to buy this historic lie. Says law professor David K. Clements released a rebuttal video recently refuting the big lie that there was no evidence of election fraud in the 2020 election. The Gateway Pundit has reported for months now the fraud was extensive and historic. Professor Clements' video already had 121,000 views. Let's see if I can get a little bit of this to play through.
Hello, my name is David Clements. I'm a business law professor here at New Mexico State University. The views that I'm going to express are mine and mine alone. This video is directed to President John Floros, as well as my colleagues here at the university, and whatever wider audience this video reaches. I don't like making these types of videos. I like my privacy. I don't like confrontation, but I feel compelled to respond to an email that was sent yesterday by the president of the university because I feel like someone needs to speak up for a large segment of the university that is silent, where their speech has been chilled. And I hope to give you an idea of what a Trump voter might look like. Because right now, I'm seeing all kinds of things being sent through social media, online, that has equated Trump voters as traitors, as treasonous scum, as racist. 75 million people, at least, voted for President Trump. And the language that's there. Even now, I saw one of our state reps or state senators in the state call for those that voted for Trump to be branded with an S, to be a seditionist. The scarlet letter coming back to rule.
And I guess I'll pause there. This thing is going to go on for about another 30 minutes or so. But yes, obviously, if you're paying any lick of attention at all, McCarthyism is rearing its ugly head yet again. We're probably going to have to go through a period of that. And I will say this. Cue the SJW folks and the cancel culture in about 10 minutes here, because you can bet your bottom dollar that they're probably going to go after this guy, and perhaps maybe by the end of the week we'll probably see that this guy will probably be forced out of his position. Anybody care to bet on that one? Nonetheless, via LifeSite News, it says a business law professor at New Mexico State University said that anyone who proposes there is no evidence for massive election fraud in November's presidential election doesn't know what they are talking about. Professor David K. Clements released a provocative video in response to a letter sent to the entire faculty of NMSU from Dr. John Floros, the university's president. Clements described the letter as regurgitating the narrative in the media regarding the election and the January 6th violence at the U.S. Capitol. While broadly addressing many issues on these topics, he was very specific with regards to his own personal investigation into the election fraud question. For those who believe there is no evidence, you don't know what you are talking about, he said. I have reviewed hours upon hours of public hearings. I have read almost all the lawsuits that are out there. Most of them were dismissed on legal process grounds. These suits, he said, were dismissed due to a legal lack of standing. The general argument that was presented in these cases, he said, was that because this was a general harm, then you have no standing because your harm has to be particular. It's not because there isn't evidence. There is evidence, the professor emphasized. In fact, I'm in possession of 574 pages of sworn affidavits, forensic reports, all of which would make its way in a court of law under the rules of evidence in a federal or state court. The fact that the evidence has not been heard here by these courts should not be conflated into this idea that there is no evidence, Clements argued. And that's the end of that article, and I would wholeheartedly agree. Obviously, having tracked a lot of this stuff since November 3rd, I now sit on a trove of about 6,000 articles from that day across many, many, many outlets, covering a lot of the same things and that he probably has in hand, with sworn affidavits, the PDFs of the court cases across a lot of the swing states, all the video evidence and that from the hearings and whatnot, outtakes, you name it, it's all there. And he's probably absolutely right. And of course, the courts will not touch it. Why? Because the courts are every bit as corrupt as everything else. And so at the end of the day, we can plead this till the cows come home. But at the end of the day, I think this is all going to have to go by way of the military justice, because nothing at this point can be trusted. All right, that being said, kind of continuing along that vein, another article along those lines says, shocking, the Dems' first bill of 2021 is to lock in fraudulent election maneuvers and steal elections in perpetuity. Color me shocked on that one, right? And in case you hadn't heard, I believe this was introduced as House Resolution 1 back on the 4th. The fraud in this past election was massive, the worst ever in recorded history, but It is nothing when compared to what the Communist Party has in store for the future of the USA and the world. In their first act, this Congress, led by true communists, apparently is ready to pass a bill allowing all future elections in the USA to be run exactly the same as any communist regime in history. The populist press is reporting the first bill put together by this Pelosi-led Congress will eliminate free and fair elections forever. Fraud will be the mandate, and Dems, the kings of fraud, will win every election henceforth. This bill is labeled the Communist Democrats for the People Act of 2021. And of course, it's very fitting that they typically name these things for exactly opposite of what they intend to be. It says below are the key aspects of the bill as noted by the populist press. It says Democrats introduced their first bill in the House as House Resolution 1, the bill that will destroy America, nationwide mail-in voting, banning restrictions on ballot harvesting, banning voter ID, criminal voters, D.C. statehood roadwork. It's all in there. And internet-only registration with electronic signature submission. Says A, requiring availability of internet for online registration. Each state, acting through the chief state election official, shall ensure that the following services are available to the public at any time on the official public websites of the appropriate state and local election officials in the state, in the same manner and subject to the same terms and conditions as the services provided by voter registration agencies under Section 7A. And then it's going to go on and highlight many of these. Number 2, banning the requirements to provide a full Social Security number for voter registration. We'll get into Section 1005, prohibiting states from requiring applicants to provide more than the last 4 digits of Social Security numbers. Number 3, nationwide motor voter registration. And of course, a lot of blue states already have that on their books. Says note that motor voter registration is how thousands of illegals became registered voters in California and Nevada, and there's many other states besides those. Goes into the terms and definitions. The term automatic registration means a system that registers an individual to vote in elections for federal office in a state, if eligible, by electronically transferring the information necessary for registration from government agencies to election officials of the state, so that, unless the individual affirmatively declines to be registered, the individual will be registered to vote in such elections. Number 4, 16-year-olds required to be registered to vote. Gee, what could possibly go wrong with that? Treatment of individuals under 18 years of age. A state may not refuse to treat an individual as an eligible individual for purposes of this part on the grounds that the individual is less than 18 years of age. So let me understand this. You got to be 21 to smoke. You got to be 21 to drink. And of course, if you're less than that, obviously you're not of age enough to handle such decisions. You got to be 18 to join the military? Is that right? But perfectly okay, I suppose, to be 16 and have enough wherewithal and cognizance to vote and make decisions along those natures. Got it. Number 5, nationwide same-day registration. This will go on. Number 6, grants, $25 million for using minors in election activities. Number 7, more children voters. Part K, acceptance of applications from individuals under 18 years of age. In general, a state may not refuse to accept or process an individual's application to register to vote in elections for federal office on the grounds that the individual is under 18 years of age at the time the individual submits the application, so long as the individual is at least 16 years of age at such time. Number 8, prohibiting attempts to clean voter rolls of non-residents. Gee, what could possibly go wrong there? It's not like Judicial Watch made any attempt to clean up any voting rolls in many suspect counties and electorates and whatnot. It goes on. 9, murderers and rapists can vote. Perfectly okay. We'll just null and void that from the past. Number 10, mandatory early voting. Note that I personally like early voting in Florida, but putting it here anyway. In general, each state shall allow individuals to vote in an election for federal office during an early voting period, which occurs prior to the date of the election, in the same manner as voting is allowed on such date. And number 11, the big one, nationwide vote by mail, ban on ballot protection measures, legalize limitless ballot harvesting. Awesome. Section 307, promoting ability of voters to vote by mail. And of course, you get into the uniform availability of absentee voting to all voters. In general, if an individual in a state is eligible to cast a vote in an election for federal office, the state may not impose any additional conditions or requirements on the eligibility of the individual to cast a vote in such election by absentee ballot by mail. Goes into the administration of voting by mail, etc. Permitting voters to designate other persons to return ballot. Gee, what could possibly go wrong there? And of course, banning voter ID. Roadwork for D.C. statehood and territory statehood. Let's see, Subtitle C, Subtitle D, territorial voting rights, redistricting reform. It's all in there. It's absolutely ridiculous. As they conclude, the article says the military must step in now and stop validating the election steal and end this communist takeover of America. And of course, if you're paying any attention, and I'm going to cover this here in a couple subsequent articles, if we think for 1 second that we can wait till 2022 midterms or even 2024, we're not going to have a chance. This does have to be resolved now. So in any case, continuing on that thread, the ultimate in hypocrisy, we get this, the National Pulse highlighting Washington Post owner admits mail-in voting disenfranchises, says in-person creates valid, fair election. Oh, Bezos. And of course, this isn't, trying to put somebody in office at the federal level, but whether or not Amazon folks and that are going to be able to vote to unionize. It says, in response to a forthcoming vote at an American Amazon facility, the company slammed mail-in ballots as disenfranchising voters and advocating for in-person voting as the best approach to a valid, fair, and successful election. The hypocritical comments come as workers at Amazon, whose CEO, Jeff Bezos, is also the owner of the Washington Post, are voting on whether to form a union. The vote is set to include approximately 6,000 workers from Amazon's Bessemer, Alabama facility. And even with voting numbers considerably smaller than the 2020 presidential election, Amazon spokesperson Heather Knox insisted that in-person voting was superior to mail-in voting. The best approach to a valid, fair, and successful election is one that is conducted manually, in person, making it easy for associates to verify and cast their votes in close proximity to their workplace. Now, why in the world would they feel that way? And how many times throughout the election cycle did we go back and find video footage of the very same words being spewed out of various Dems' mouths? The hypocrisy knows no bounds. Amazon's filing echoed Knox's anti-mail-in ballot stance, noting that a mail election could disenfranchise dozens or hundreds of voters because it is imperfect. Bezos' Washington Post, however, took a different stance on mail-in voting regarding the presidential election by publishing a host of pieces peddling a pro-mail-in voting stance, including 5 myths about mail-in voting, why arguments that mail-in balloting will undermine the election are wrong, and minuscule number of potentially fraudulent ballots in states with universal mail voting undercuts Trump claims about election risks. What's more, the paper also fact-checked President Trump's claim that mail-in ballots will lead to massive electoral fraud and a rigged 2020 election as patently false, ranking it 4 out of 5 Pinocchios. Ay. Like I said, folks, the hypocrisy knows absolutely no bounds. All right, and as if that is not bad enough, they want to browbeat the Republicans into submission. We know that they want to exercise the cancel culture to the nth degree. So why not go one step further? We get this out of Illinois Review. Says Illinois Congressmember signs on to effort to remove Christian influence from American culture. So yes, if you think that there isn't going to be persecution in this land, you might want to think again. Out of D.C. says the name of a congressional member that represents Illinois' 6th district, which includes what was once known as America's Center of Christian Evangelism, Wheaton College, where the late evangelist Billy Graham attended college, is included among a group demanding President Joe Biden and VP Kamala Harris remove Christian influence from the nation's culture. Says, we urge you to lead our nation on a path that revives the founders' vision of religious freedom in our government and promotes a unifying patriotic pluralism, not dogmatic religious chauvinism, in American society, states the Secular Democrats of America within a 28-page list of demands. We believe that this is a moment not only to enact policies to advance constitutional secularism, but to position the Democratic Party to take back the mantle of religious freedom and pluralism from the Republican Party. Mind you, this is the same party that, if you remember right, at the nomination many years ago for HRC, booed God. So, hey, what do you expect? The document, presented to the Biden-Harris transition team by Representatives Jamie Raskin and Jared Huffman, was endorsed by Representative Jerry McNerney. Those three are listed as founding members of the Congressional Free Thought Caucus, one of which is Illinois Congress member Sean Casten. The document calls on Biden to make the following changes. And their bullet item here says, eliminate government support for all crisis pregnancy centers and all abstinence-only education programs in schools. Deny free speech and religious liberty to select Americans based on their religious beliefs. Incentivize states to strip parents of all non-medical exemptions to mandatory vaccinations for children in schools or daycare centers. Step right up and get your COVID jab, folks. That's what they want. Remove In God We Trust from U.S. currency. Repeal the Religious Freedom Restoration Act. Rescind and replace the Trump DOJ's federal protections for religious liberty. Appoint an attorney general who will support governors whose emergency COVID-19 executive orders restrict gatherings at houses of worship. Reverse the Trump administration policies that have allowed faith-based government-funded contractors to provide adoption and foster care services, and work with Congress to pass the Every Child Deserves a Family Act. Continuing on, fully and robustly fund comprehensive sex education, which to the leftist means encouraging elementary and middle school-aged children to declare themselves one of dozens of made-up non-biological gender identities and learn how to engage in various deviant forms of sex. Work with governors to educate and combat Project Blitz and encourage the introduction of the Do No Harm Act at the state level. Project Blitz is a pro-family lobbying group described by the secular Democrats as a coordinated effort by Christian nationalists to inject religion into public education, attack reproductive health care, and undermine LGBTQ equality using a distorted definition of religious freedom. And the last point says the document tells Biden, we urge you to avoid invoking the phrase Judeo-Christian values, as it has been weaponized by the religious right to advance an agenda that has the veneer of inclusivity, but actually undermines religious freedom and tolerance and does not represent tens of millions of Americans implicitly excluded from its formulation. And of course, the link to the 28-page document that they submitted can be found there. But again, this is what they want to try and push. Full stop. They have control over all the houses, all the branches, the various bureaucracies, all of it. Don't think for a second that that won't come about. All right. So, switching gears up a little bit. Davos starting this week, started today on the 25th, runs through the 29th, I believe. Courts had this as what to expect from a virtual Davos. And I had been mistaken. I thought that they had pushed this out to May, but I later found out that that is true, that they're still doing a virtual one now, but the in-person meeting will indeed be in May in Singapore. So this out of courts says this time last year, world and business leaders hobnobbed in Davos as the first COVID-19 cases started to pop up outside China. This week, the World Economic Forum reprises its annual meeting, albeit in a very different form. The exclusive gathering, which kicks off January 24th with a global concert, will be virtual. Davos regulars like Angela Merkel and Bill Gates will check in from around the world. The agenda, too, has been shaped by the pandemic. It is organized around the Great Reset, the World Economic Forum's effort to rethink the global economy post-COVID-19. So, again, this thing is going to... Oh, look at that. Apparently I must have grabbed the wrong version here, but nonetheless, you get the idea. And let me just play forward what they had in store here. I'll play about the first minute or so of what they played here this morning.
We've reached a human crisis unlike any that we've experienced in the last 75 years.
Meaning one side has too much, the other side will oppose it.
We've done a lot of things to create the imbalances that we have today.
COVID-19 has laid bare the systemic social inequities. Addressing these larger problems must become our priority.
We have to make sure that the economy actually works for the people.
It's not just about growth for growth's sake, but how we share that prosperity.
It is not sustainability or profit. It is profit through sustainability.
We have to reskill our people to be successful, and if they're more prosperous, the companies are going to be more prosperous.
The most important tools are the education and the technology.
Technology creates opportunities so that people are able to move to greener industries.
It's not about not knowing that we are in a climate emergency. It's about choosing to take action.
For that, you need to act decisively in the support of renewable energy.
The science is very clear today that the sustainable path is more attractive.
We can focus on the short-term benefit, or we can look further to solve bigger issues.
We need unprecedented collaboration to create systemic change.
It means redesigning the instruments we currently have
on a completely different trajectory, and that doesn't leave anybody behind.
We are one community, and we have to remember that.
Sounds so happy, feel good, doesn't it? Yeah, sure does. And so, let me continue on. Gateway Pundit picked up an article that says World Economic Forum suspends invitation to President Trump from future conferences. Whoop-de-doo, right? Says opens this year's Globalist Fest with Chinese leader Xi Jinping. And we'll get into a couple clips of that here momentarily as well. Says President Trump was given a hero's welcome Thursday at the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland in 2018 and again in 2020. President Trump had a lot to brag about. Trump brought the U.S. the greatest economy ever, including the greatest stock market gains in history and the lowest unemployment rates in modern history. Continuing on, says, but now that he is out of office, the globalist elites are anxious to get back to their business. The founder of Davos, Klaus Schwab, told reporters he will likely not invite President Trump back to the elitist forum. Gee, I wonder why. Instead, Davos opened this year with a virtual speech by Chinese Communist leader Xi Jinping. The globalists invited the Chinese leader to lecture on the coronavirus and human rights. And that says it all. So let me play this through just a little bit. The World Economic Forum says there is no doubt that humanity will prevail over the virus and emerge even stronger.
The past year was marked by the sudden onslaught of the COVID-19 pandemic. Global public health faced severe threat, and the world economy was mired in deep recession. Humanity encountered multiple crises rarely seen in human history. The past year also bore witness to the enormous resolve and courage of people around the world in battling the deadly coronavirus. Guided by science, reason, and a humanitarian spirit, the world has achieved initial progress in fighting COVID-19. That said, the pandemic is far from over. The recent resurgence in COVID cases reminds us that we must carry on the fight. Yet we remain convinced that winter cannot stop the arrival of spring, and darkness can never shroud the light of dawn. There is no doubt that humanity will prevail over the virus and emerge even stronger from this disaster.
Interesting. A little bit of a sideways reference to the old dark winter that we have heard spewed from Biden's mouth. Continuing on, says the international community should provide necessary support for developing economies. President Xi said equal rights, equal opportunities, and equal rules should be strengthened. So a little bit more here.
We should recognize that with the growth of developing countries, global prosperity and stability will be put on a more solid footing. And developed countries will stand to benefit from such growth. The international community should keep its eyes on the long run, honor its commitment, and provide necessary support to developing countries and safeguard their legitimate development interests. Equal rights, equal opportunities, and equal rules should be strengthened so that all countries will benefit from the opportunities and the fruits of development.
So there you have it, in the words of Xi Jinping, right? It looks like the power seems to be shifting a little bit to the east. And mind you, if you've paid any attention at all to some of the pieces in that I've put together regarding the Belt and Road Initiative, you know that is advancing. Or if you prefer to call it the One Belt, One Road, or the Silk Road Initiative, it's all still advancing. Continuing on that theme, says it's all a bunch of lies, just all propaganda in response to the World Economic Forum. But nonetheless, we'll have more on that. I may end up doing a complete piece on the developments around that maybe here later in the week. So stay tuned in that regard. All right, over to the Epoch Times here. It says Trump team disavows newly formed MAGA Patriot Party. So yes, there's been some word out there that a new party has indeed formed. I think many of you might have seen the FEC filing for the Donald J. Trump for President, Inc. And of course, that was not by POTUS. That was put up by somebody else who apparently was looking toward that as a Patriot Party. But apparently, Trump has disavowed this newly formed Patriot Party. So former President Donald Trump campaign team is disavowing any affiliation with a newly formed political committee called the MAGA Patriot Party. We are not supportive of this effort, have nothing to do with it, and only know about it through public reporting, campaign advisor Jason Miller told the Epoch Times today, January 25th, via text message. Donald J. Trump for President, in a miscellaneous report filed with the FEC, said it wanted to disavow the activities of a committee named Patriot Party. The MAGA Patriot Party National Committee filed a notice of organization with the Commission earlier on January 25th. While the filing claimed that Trump's team was linked to the new committee, Trump's team said it didn't authorize the filing of a form claiming it as a participant in joint fundraising activities, hasn't entered into any joint fundraising agreement with the new committee, and has no knowledge of the Patriot Party's activities. MAGA, which typically stands for Make America Great Again, was Trump's campaign slogan. To be clear, DJTFP has no affiliation with Patriot Party, which is not authorized by Mr. Trump or DJTFP, Trump team said. DJTFP is placing this disavowal notice on the public record out of concern for confusion among the public, which may be misled to believe that Patriot Party's activities have been authorized by Mr. Trump or DJTFP, or that contributions to this unauthorized committee are being made to DJTFP when that is not true. Officials of the MAGA Patriot Party National Committee didn't immediately respond to a request by the Epoch Times for comment. A man named James Davis of Punta Gorda, Florida, is listed as the committee's treasurer. Speculation has run rampant since Trump left office last week as to whether he'll try to form a third party to challenge the status quo. A new poll showed a hypothetical Patriot Party led by the former president would be more popular with voters than the Republican Party. Trump has stayed mum about his plans now that he's out of office, although his advisors have said he will get involved with the 2022 midterm elections and may be considering a 2024 presidential run. So very, very interesting. Yes, seeing a lot of that floating out there on social media, but apparently out of the Trump campaign or Trump's team, headed by Jason Miller, that is being disavowed. That being said, what is approved, on the other hand, we get this out of National File. Breaking, Donald Trump announces office of the former president, pledges to carry on the agenda of the Trump administration. And so, think back, as Trump was elected back in 2016 and what we learned about all the information dropped behind the scenes, right? We knew of a shadow presidency being orchestrated by none other than 44 every step of the way. Perhaps this is more of a sanctioned approach, I guess, in forming this office of the former president. Time will tell. President Trump will carry on the agenda of the Trump administration through advocacy, organizing, and public activism. Today, President Donald J. Trump announced the office of the former president, staffed by President Trump's former White House advisors. According to a statement from the office of the former president, Trump will continue to push for his America First agenda using the office. Today, the 45th President of the United States, Donald J. Trump, formally opened the office of the former president, the statement began. The office will be responsible for managing President Trump's correspondence, public statements, appearances, and official activities to advance the interests of the United States and to carry on the agenda of the Trump administration through advocacy, organizing, and public activism. President Trump will always and forever be a champion for the American people, the statement concludes. And here we see the letter via Ezra Levant here, much the same as what was just read. Says CNN White House correspondent Caitlin Collins noted that the office will be run by former White House aides and will operate from Palm Beach, Florida. And it says Trump has now established the office of the former president, which is run by former White House aides and will be responsible for managing President Trump's correspondence, public statements, appearances, and official activities from Palm Beach, Florida. There has been much speculation about if, when, and how President Trump would return to the political stage. Some questions seemed to be answered when he broke his uncharacteristic post-presidency silence to endorse Kelly Ward's re-election bid to gain a second term as the Arizona Republican Party chairwoman. Following President Trump's endorsement, Ward's re-election was a success. She won 51.5% of the vote, with another Trump rally earning 48.5%. And here we see Kelly Ward. It's such an honor to have President Donald Trump's total and complete endorsement as I run for re-election as AZ GOP chairwoman.
Stand by for a special message from President Donald J. Trump.
Hello, Arizona. This is President Donald Trump, and I need you to help us with somebody that's really worked hard and done a great job. That's Kelly Ward. She's running to be reelected as the Republican chair of the Arizona Republican Party, and she is a terrific person. She's a person I know. She's somebody that you'll never find anybody more dedicated to every aspect of what we're all dedicated to. And so I give her my complete and total endorsement, whether it's the Second Amendment or so many other things that she's for, and very, very heavy on our military and election integrity, all of the things that we want. That's Kelly Ward, and nobody will outwork her. So I give my complete and total endorsement to Kelly Ward. Thank you very much.
Yeah, there you have it. So, in the words of POTUS, this move appears to have been foreshadowed by former Trump advisor Jason Miller, who indicated that President Trump would use his time out of office to advocate for election integrity across the country, and would use his dynamic influence to campaign for candidates willing to enact his agenda. It is also worth noting that there is a similarity in naming conventions between the office of the former president, which President Trump established today, and the fictional office of the president-elect that Joe Biden claimed to represent during the 2-month period that President Trump contested the 2020 election. Biden's fictional office was widely mocked by conservatives. It remains unclear if President Trump is planning to return to presidential politics in 2024. So that's about as much as we know at the moment with the goings-on of POTUS in terms of any sort of parties starting up or any sort of advocacy or anything along those lines. More to come, I'm sure. All right. Switching things up a little bit, we get this today. It's been a while since we've heard anything about the Epstein escapades, and we got this little nugget here today. It says Leon Black steps down as Apollo CEO after review finds he paid Jeffrey Epstein $158 million. So Leon Black will step down as CEO of Apollo Global Management, the giant private equity company he founded in 1990 and built into a $433 billion financial powerhouse that has become a big lender to corporate America. The announcement came as Apollo revealed the conclusion of a review by law firm Deckert into Black's relationship with the late pedophile Jeffrey Epstein, which reportedly cleared Black and Apollo of any involvement in criminal activities with Epstein. I have advised the Apollo board that I will retire as CEO on or before my 70th birthday in July and remain as chairman, Black said in a statement. Over the past year and a half, Apollo CEO and founder Leon Black had been caught in a web of allegations that he was too close to suicided and disgraced pedophile Jeffrey Epstein. After it emerged, Black had paid Epstein $158 million after he was released from jail. And while Black published a letter in which he admitted that it was a terrible mistake to associate with Epstein, and like many people I respected, I decided to give Epstein a second chance, Black said last October. It wasn't nearly enough, as some asset managers froze their new capital allocations to Apollo. It eventually prompted Apollo to hire Deckert to conduct an independent review of Black's dealings with Epstein to clear Black's and Apollo's name. Well, today after the close, Apollo said the Conflicts Committee completed its independent review of Black's previous professional relationship with Jeffrey Epstein and publicly released the report, which found no evidence that Mr. Black was involved in the criminal activities of the late Epstein, who was indicted in 2019 on federal sex trafficking charges involving underage girls. Among the key findings of the Deckert report, Apollo never retained Epstein for any services, and Epstein never invested in any Apollo-managed funds. Deckert found no evidence that Black was involved in any way with Epstein's criminal activities at any time. And I guess I'll pause there, and maybe we need to go back to Exhibit MM, as I recall, out of the main docket that had the flight logs, and see whether or not the guy's name was on there. I forgot to do that, but perhaps that might warrant a little quick and dirty investigation. Black believed and witness generally agreed that Epstein provided advice that conferred more than $1 billion and as much as $2 billion or more in tax savings, the report states, which, needless to say, is ridiculous for a person who has already surrounded by the biggest tax experts on earth, who also happen to be Black's employees. The report supports Black's contention that he paid Epstein a fee he believed was roughly equivalent to 5% of the value that late financier generated on an after-tax basis, according to the Wall Street Journal. It describes the two men's relationship deteriorating beginning in 2016 after a fee dispute, even though Black's last payment to Epstein was made in April 2017. Black also asked employees of his family office, attorneys at law firm Paul Weiss, Rifkind, Wharton, and Garrison, LLP, and other outside accountants, lawyers, and tax professionals to vet and challenge Epstein's advice when it was given, the report states. In short, there is no question that Epstein performed substantive work for Black, and that Black genuinely believed that Epstein was extremely smart, capable, and saved him substantial amounts of money, the report says. And yet, while superficially all that is great, everything about this announcement stinks. Like, for example, why was Black ousted as a result of an attempted boardroom coup, with the New York Times writing that Black engaged in a brief power struggle this weekend over control of the firm, a rift that opened up after an inquiry revealed that one founder, Apollo's chief executive and chairman, Leon Black, had paid $150 million to the convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. Very, very good question. So, perhaps we might still see some additional revelations around all the Epstein stuff. Hashtag Epstein didn't kill himself, but we'll have to see. And last but not least on the broadcast tonight, the other night I did go through and cover the 1776 report that was subsequently scrubbed from the White House page upon the infraudulation. And, of course, dug it up, so we have that in PDF form, went through it. It's about 2.5 hours. You can find it on the channel here or on the archive page over on YouTube. But we had this piece come through. Says 1776 White House whitewash and cover-up. Exclusive. Chuck Norris takes on Biden for deleting commission's scholarly report on day one. And man, I can imagine the memes about that. Chuck Norris, here we go. Says 2 days before President Donald Trump exited the White House, one of his administration's most important documents was released, the 1776 Final Report. It is a 40-page treatise about America's founders' views and history compiled by a team of distinguished historians and scholars. They did so with the mission to demonstrate and counter the left's war on U.S. history and goal to reinterpret the founders' and framers' original intent and work in light of the progressive agenda in education. Despite its sound scholarship, President Biden revoked and disbanded the 1776 Commission and deleted its report from the White House website in one of his 17 executive orders on day one of his presidency. Interesting to note, Biden unilaterally enacted 30 executive orders in his first 3 days of office, compared to Trump's 4 in the whole month of January 2017, Obama's 8 in January 2009, W. Bush's 2 in January 2001, Clinton's 2 in January 1993, Herbert Walker Bush's 1 in January 1989, and Reagan's 1 executive order during January 1981. Boy, that's a mouthful. So a little bit of history of all the various presidents on day one. Makes you wonder why the urgency to use the old pen and phone as opposed to getting this through Congress. So anyway, on Monday, January 18th, MLK Day, the above was how the White House website showcased the 1776 Commission and its final report. The red deleted stamp and oval highlight mine. And there we see that. That's what it looked like prior. And of course, now, I think I showed that the other night, you get the 404. Mike Gonzalez, a senior fellow at the Heritage's Elysian Center for Foreign Policy, the Angeles T. Arredondo Pluribus Unum Fellow, and one of the members of the 1776 Commission, questioned Biden's urgency and motive in his column. Biden's disbanding of 1776 Commission shows left's war on U.S. history. Is the baying from the woke left so furious that dissolving a commission named after our nation's founding and deleting a report calling for teaching objective history makes it top of the list? The symbolism alone should give pause. It says, before the ink dried on Biden's executive order and Americans could even read the 1776 report, it was deleted from the White House website, and the mainstream media were mobilized to brand the scholarship of the 1776 Commission as racist propaganda. Did Biden, his administration, or media outlets have time to read and critique the report, or check the credentials of the scholars who compiled it? I doubt it. And of course, there you see the 404 page not found. It says by Thursday, January 21st, on President Biden's first full day in office, the above was how the White House website displayed the same URL page that formerly took a searcher to the 1776 Commission and report. And of course, the deleted image was his. It says here are a few resulting mainstream headlines from this last week. Out of MSNBC, the Trump administration's thinly veiled rebuke of the 1619 Project is a sloppy, racist mess. NBC News, Trump's 1776 Commission tried to rewrite U.S. history. Biden had other ideas. Out of AP, Biden revokes Trump report promoting patriotic education. And the Clown News said Biden rescinds 1776 Commission via executive order. The Compost, well, that didn't take long. Biden removes Trump's 1776 report on U.S. history from White House website. And the paper of record, the New York Times, Biden administration quickly revamps the White House website. The worst part about the new administration's snuffing out of the team of distinguished historians and scholars that comprised the 1776 Commission was the ways they were assailed, demeaned, denigrated, and demonized as radicals, racists, and inept historians. But were they? You decide for yourselves, as I have listed their credentials below. I spared no column space so you can skim or examine them in depth. In addition to most being prolific published authors, they are well-respected scholars, esteemed professors, and historians, contrary to most media outlets' reporting. And I don't think I'll go through all of this. If you want, I'll go ahead and drop the link out here in chat. You guys can check that out. I'll just quick skim through this a bit. But of course, like I said, you can go back on the channel here and pick up the full reading of the 1776 report in its glory. I think it took about 2 hours and 45 minutes to get through, if I recall. So it was a bit lengthy, and I even skipped Appendix 2, which was the Declaration of Independence, because I have already done that. So, Dr. Larry P. Arnn, he's a PhD, 12th president of Hillsdale College, as well as a professor of history and politics. Skimming through, Dr. Carol Swain, PhD, a retired African-American professor of political science and law for the last 30 years at Vanderbilt University and University of Princeton. We get Dr. Matthew Spalding, Ph.D., Professor in Constitutional Government at Hillsdale College and the Dean of the Van Andel Graduate School of Government at Hillsdale College's D.C. campus. Dr. Victor Davis Hanson, Ph.D., Stanford, Military and Classics Historian and Professor at California State University, Senior Fellow at Stanford University's Hoover Institution, as well as visiting professorships at other academic institutions like Pepperdine and UC Berkeley. Dr. Charles R. Kessler, Ph.D., Dengler-Dykema, Distinguished Professor of Government at Claremont McKenna College and Claremont Graduate University with areas of expertise in American constitutionalism, American politics, constitutional law, Greek and Roman political thought, idealism, nihilism, political philosophy, etc. Dr. Jerry Davis, Ph.D., President of College of the Ozarks, who, with 4 degrees to his name, has had a prestigious 44-year career as a college president, one of the longest in higher education. We also get Dr. Thomas Lindsay, Ph.D. at the University of Chicago, is currently the director of the Texas Public Policy Foundation Center for Higher Education. Dr. Phil Bryant, the 8-year governor of Mississippi, 2012 to 2020, who earned a bachelor's degree in criminal justice from the University of Southern Miss, a master's degree and honorary doctorate in political science from Mississippi College. Dr. Michael Ferris received his BA in political science from Western Washington University, an LLM degree in public international law from the University of London, and a Juris Doctorate from the Gonzaga University School of Law. Guy Hart Gaines received the Lifetime Achievement Award in 2015, where the Palm Beach Daily News reported. For 13 years, Gaines served the George Washington Mount Vernon Ladies Association as Vice Regent for Florida. John Gibbs received his degrees from Stanford University and the Harvard Kennedy School of Government. Mike Gonzalez, a senior fellow in Heritage's Ellison Center for Foreign Policy and the Angeles T. Arredondo e Pluribus Unum Fellow. Peter N. Kirsanow received his BA from Cornell University and his JD with honors from Cleveland State University. Ned Ryan graduated with highest distinction, summa cum laude, with degrees in English and History from the University of Kansas. Rob McEwen, senior advisor from the nationally recognized law firm of Greenbaum, Dahl, and McDonald. Julie Strauss-Levin is an attorney with extensive experience. And it says, does that above group really seem like a group of scholars who would haphazardly or biasedly approach the history of America's founders? Discarding their work or demonizing these great scholars is a clear bias of a secular progressive leftist agenda. The 1776 report was about much more than racial perspectives. It is about America's founders' views on constitutional interpretation, history, the role of the family, the respect for laws, identity politics, progressivism, governmental limitations, and even the role of religion and faith. You would think those are all pretty important things as we see some of this stuff trickle out here, especially by executive decrees. Committee member Dr. Carol Swain said that secular progressives even avoid America's true religious history and influence to our detriment. There's no way you can look at the constitutions of the 13 colonies up until parts of the 20th century and say that our nation was not deeply influenced by religion, the Judeo-Christian religion in particular, and that is a part of who we are, part of history we shouldn't try to erase. Now square that against the article I covered just a little bit ago about them wanting to secularize things and scrub Judeo-Christian from any semblance of writings, constitution, or otherwise. My New York Times bestseller, Black Belt patriotism is all about reawakening the American dream by returning to the founders' vision and understanding for our republic. I've read the 1776 report, and I can tell you it is spot on in its history and perspectives. We shouldn't be covering up Americans' founders' history and views, but elevating and learning from them. Whether we are Republican, Democrat, or Independent, what our founders established is the bedrock for all we are and do as Americans, including our cherished Bill of Rights and liberties. On December 27, 1820, Thomas Jefferson wrote William Roscoe about his vision for the University of Virginia, chartered in 1819. This institution will be based on the illimitable freedom of the human mind, for here we are, not afraid to follow the truth wherever it may lead, nor to tolerate any error as long as reason is left free to combat it. But what should happen 250 years later when our public universities avoid the testing of truths, or suppress alternate opinions because they are unpopular or politically incorrect, or no longer tolerate opinions now considered errors by the progressive elite? What happens when socio-political agendas or scientific paradigms dominate university views to the exclusion of a minority even being mentioned or tested? When higher centers of learning fail to be places where all ideas are examined from a variety of reasoned perspectives? What happens when the political and public educational pendulum swings from the concern for the tyranny of sectarianism in Jefferson's day to secularism in ours? I'll say it again. We shouldn't fear anyone's point of view, and so test its truthfulness for ourselves, especially when sound and prestigious scholars are officially commissioned by the White House to present the history of America's founders, for we are the people. It is appalling that a new administration covered up their work and whitewashed the White House website of their contributions on its very first day in office by executive order. Is their agenda not clear in doing so from the outset? Bottom line, in response to Biden's disposal of the 1776 committee and its report, member Dr. Jerry Davis told Fox and Friends, "What we see here is just another battle in the war against American heritage. Why would anyone have a problem with the commission, whose sole goal is to better inform people about the heritage of the country?" Dr. Davis concluded with the charge, "Read the report for yourself. Don't listen to these know-it-alls in the Ivy League or in the media that want to tell us how to live and how to think." I agree. Don't take their or my word for it. Read it for yourself. And then share it in my column with the credentials of the 1776 Commission members with everyone you know. Download the 1776 report soon before it's gone forever, and distribute it especially to every member in your family and in your circle of friends, for the sake of our Republic's history and our posterity. You can still momentarily access the full 1776 Commission final report in the archive dungeon, but because I don't expect it to stay there long either, you can also find it by visiting the College of the Ozarks website here. And I did drop that link out there. You can also find that, as I had put that out on my Patreon page. You can find that in my bundle of places to find the platforms and that as well. And yes, that is part of the reason why I thought it important to go ahead and go through it and more or less memorialize it for the said purpose. So, I would encourage you guys, if you haven't already, go back, check that out, download it, listen to it, whatever you fancy. That being said, that is going to do it for this edition of Midnight Rider. There's been a bit of other news net out there today, but I think that's enough to try and squeeze into the show for the evening. We'll be back with more here in the next day or so, and we'll see you back here real soon. Take care, and God bless everybody.